Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third installment of our Career Insight series, Careers in Language Teaching. My name is Jihyun Ju. I'm one of the advisors here at Beyond Barnard. I'm also the program coordinator leading our Career Insight series. We'll be hearing from 3 alums today. Thank you so much to our panelists for making the time to join us. The bios of our alums can be found in the chat, which I'll be dropping in a second. There will be an audience Q&A toward the end of our program. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourself when the time comes. So my first question to our panelists is introductions. What is your current role and how did you get here? Additionally, what sparked your initial interest in the work you're doing now? And we can do sort of low stakes popcorn style. Whoever wants to go first, please feel free to jump in.
I can start. Hi, my name is Wendy Bermudez. First, I just want to say thank you for having me today to share my experience in education with you all. I'm very excited to do that. So currently I am the dual language immersion coordinator for Arlington Public Schools in Northern Virginia. How did I get here? Well, I was actually, when I came to the US from El Salvador, I was placed in an immersion program, dual language, English and Spanish. And that program changed my life. And the reason I decided to become an educator was because of the positive experience that I had in that program. I learned to read, write, speak in English at the same time that I maintained my native language, Spanish. And so as I got older, I realized that I wanted other students to also have that opportunity to be able to use both languages. And so I started working towards that. I went to Barnard. I did urban studies and teaching. Then I became a 5th grade teacher for 5 years. Then I slowly transitioned to more coaching roles. I was a specialist in the World Languages Office in my district. I also served as a bilingual teacher for the gifted. And so all of that helped me in my current role. I'm an administrator in my district. And so I just think that for me, dual language education is something that I'm very passionate about. And so it was something that I knew from an early age that that's what I wanted to do. And I want to continue talking to families and the community about the benefits of these programs.
I can jump right in. So my name is Natalie Hernandez. I graduated from Barnard in 2013. I actually majored in Italian studies at Barnard. My interest in teaching actually began at Teachers College, which I applied for soon after. I applied for applied linguistics because I actually had no idea that Barnard was offering a certification track in Italian teaching. So it's something, this is why I'm so grateful that you guys are doing this, because if I had known that, I would have saved a lot of money and saved a lot of time. So, in between that time there, I went to study in Italy, started teaching English there. Right now I'm an Italian teacher at Long Branch High School. And I love that job. It's amazing that, you're, Wendy, you're doing administration, because I know what that entails. Yeah. They've actually asked me to do. I'm like, I think I prefer teaching instead. I love everything about teaching. And there's just something so important to say about the importance of teaching languages, because it, I think, as we all know here in this room, one of the expectations as per the ACTFL is becoming global citizens, and it helps us understand other people better and other cultures. And English is not quite the established world language, so it's our responsibility to understand other cultures and their languages. So I think as a language teacher, it's really important to kind of be cognizant of that and prepare students to learn to speak to other cultures and understand them, and know that it's not just language, it's also understanding, mentality and all of that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and love my job.
Absolutely. Thank you to Wendy and Natalie. It's really lovely being here as part of this panel. My name is Mabel Lee, and I am currently a 6th grade Spanish and Spanish language arts teacher at Independence Charter School in Philadelphia. So this is my 4th year at Independence Charter and my 10th year of teaching overall. Before this, I was teaching middle school Spanish at St. Anne's Episcopal School in Delaware. So what initially sparked my interest in languages and teaching in general was my time in Madrid. So after graduating from Barnard as an English major and a Hispanic cultures minor in 2008, I decided to move to Madrid because I really wanted to immerse myself in a Spanish-speaking city abroad. I didn't get a chance to study abroad, so I really just wanted that immersion. I really wanted to learn a lot of Spanish and be able to really speak it fluently. So when I arrived in Madrid, I got my TOEFL certificate during that first month. I began to teach English classes at like different language academies. And then over the course of 4 years, I taught at different elementary schools and high schools there. During that time there, I also earned my master's degree in Spanish language and literature with Middlebury Madrid campus. Yeah, and so, you know, my love for language teaching really got a kickstart during my time in Madrid. And so when I decided to come back home, I started just looking for jobs teaching Spanish. And I'm really glad, you know, I was able to become a teacher, and I'm really happy where I am now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. We're seeing such a variety of majors across this panel. And so I'd love to hear about sort of how you utilize your undergraduate education beyond the classroom space. What skill sets would you say are important to the current work that you do now?
I can start. So I did the education program at Barnard, and my major was urban studies and teaching. So I was able to actually, as part of the ed program, work in a dual language immersion school in the city. That's where I did my practicum. In my thesis, I was able to combine what I was learning from my practicum, and my thesis was on also dual language education. I can't remember right now off the top of my head the exact title, but I learned a lot about the history of these programs, the students that it was meant to serve, and the goals of the program. So I did a lot of research, and that helped me a lot, especially when I started interviewing for my first teaching job in dual language education. I was able to share a lot of that, what I knew. And so especially when you're interviewing for a teaching job, making sure that that vision that you have for teaching also matches really well with the school that you're interviewing with. So all of that prepared me to be able to know exactly what type of school setting I wanted to start my career education in. So it's really helpful. And what skill sets would you say important? Communication skills. And for me, both in English and Spanish, being able to communicate with Spanish speaking families, students from all kinds of backgrounds. And also because I am now in administration, making sure that you are communicating really well with other people in central office, administrators, all sorts of people. So definitely something really important.
So as for the skill set question, I think that in my case, it's a little different in that my focus was a little more linguistics, and I was passionate about linguistics. But one of the things that I learned studying abroad was, because I also studied at the University of Milan, I forgot to say that. And again, like my passion for Italian actually came in high school. So my high school teacher actually, you know, got me to want to teach Italian. But one of the things that I learned was that you can apply that knowledge and language in other careers, such as Apple. So Apple had actually reached out to me to be like, you know, Italian language linguist for them, who does, you know, coding and whatnot. And so a lot of their, you know, aside, communication is really important, you know, as Wendy said, because it allows us to be able to understand, again, like I said earlier, other cultures and understand kind of their mentality. And, you know, one of the things that we bring up a lot in linguistics is, does language form the way that you think, or is the way that you think, you know? So are you a different person when you're speaking that language, right? And I think that that's one of the important questions that I prompt my students to think about a lot, because I notice that I am very different when I think in Italian. But as per the linguistics, again, applying that knowledge and how language changes over time and understanding how we can use our current L1 and expand on that to understand other people and, be a more global citizen. So for Italian, I speak Italian, French, and Spanish, and that has made it so much easier to study abroad, to go to other places, visit other places, communicate with other people, and it has opened a lot of doors, and jobs and whatnot. But I tell my students all the time, it's really important to think about all the things that you can do with Italian that are not just teaching. And teaching, you can also teach also in government jobs. Also, like they want you to teach in I believe for like the Air Force and whatnot. So there's always teaching. There's so many different places where they're always looking for teachers, in order to solve like big world problems. And so understanding how the language that you speak can actually make a difference. I think that that's one of the, one of the important questions when you're doing this. It's not just I'm speaking another language, I sound cool, but it's also how you can make a difference speaking that language and solve world problems. And so, it sounds very broad, but at the end of the day, language really is important because, again, not everyone speaks English. Just speaking a language is not enough in order to be able to understand other people's mindsets and how they think. So Italians are very open, and Americans are a little more reserved. And so, there are a lot of fine lines here that, we must be aware of when we're teaching, and also when we're, teaching other students about this language and learning another language, that it's not just the language, it's also the community, the culture, or the mentality. I'm not sure if I addressed the question there.
You absolutely did. Thank you, Natalie.
So during my time at Barnard, I was an English major with a concentration in creative writing, more specifically poetry. So I would say that having had a lot of practice as a reader and a writer over the course of my undergraduate life has really shaped my career as it is now, and also the person that I am today. So for example, like being able to look carefully at a text, think critically about it, and write about it with original ideas. All that is something that I'm trying to currently teach to my sixth graders in my Spanish language arts classes. We also have this huge unit on poetry. So, poetry during my time at Barnard was just such a, the classes that I took on poetry had such a huge impact on me. I was a writing fellow at Barnard, which was an awesome experience. And I also took many of, like I said, Saskia Hamilton's poetry workshops, which, like I said, had a huge impact on me during my time at Barnard. To this day, I, enjoy sharing my poetry with others in the local community. I bring a lot of poetry into my Spanish classes at school. I run a monthly book club, which is like one of my favorite things to do in my free time. So yeah, I would say reading, writing, and also like doing this in dialogue with other people in my school, in my community. It's still a huge part of my life now, and Barnard really helped set that up for me. In terms of useful skills for my current position, I would say that being able to be adaptable, lots of patience and empathy, not only with your students, but also with yourself. Attention to detail and organization, and like Wendy and Natalie already mentioned, like communication skills, very, very important. And I think problem solving skills too are important to being a teacher. Every single day, it's a job where you can't predict what is going to happen at any given day, any given moment. And there's always every day just problems to solve. And some things can be frustrating, but I find that it can also be just very like energizing and inspiring, when you finally reach, a student that, maybe had been struggling in your class. So, thinking through problems and even collaborating with other colleagues are really important skills to have. And these were all skills that I definitely had to cultivate and work at over the last decade of my career. So I would say that teaching kind of really shaped me as a person and has made me such a better educator and overall person that I am today.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that valuable insight there. Mabel, I'm curious, actually, is that monthly book club for the 5th graders or for like the entire school?
Oh, no, it's just a personal thing.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
personal thing. No, it's still very,
Just
very
like,
cool.
yeah. But we do a lot of like independent reading, like book group type stuff in my Spanish language arts classes too.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you so much. I do want to ask, and I know, Natalie, you sort of touched on this, to learn the language is to understand the community is something that you said, which I love. All of our panelists here have experience both teaching abroad and in the US. And I'm curious to know, like, can you speak on these respective experiences just more broadly?
Yeah. So after I graduated, I knew that I wanted to go back to grad school, but I had to work first because I needed to save money. So I knew a friend who had studied, actually, no, not studied abroad, but had taught in South Korea. So I connected with them. I asked about the process, how to apply. And so I got a lot of information and I went through it. I interviewed, I got a job at a hagwon, which is kind of like an academy, an English academy after school. So I went for a year and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And it was a really good experience to have as an adult because you go in there not knowing the language. And like, we've been talking about culture, right? Language and culture, they intertwine, you can't separate them. And it was just a really wonderful experience to have that as an adult and go in there and be new to everything. I couldn't communicate, so I had to learn how to communicate with people. I had to figure out those nuances of language, how to be, interact with others. In Asian cultures, it's very different than American, US, or even my own Latino culture. So it was really good and something that I definitely highly recommend. In terms of teaching and working with that population, again, it's like you're working with a population that for me, I had never worked with. So that was also a learning experience. And so when I did come back to the US, I had that experience of being able to work with kids from a completely different background. And you have to get good at it because, in order to be an effective teacher, you need to be able to connect with students and connect in different ways. So that was really good for me in that way. And also it was a lot of fun eating Korean barbecue almost every weekend. It was amazing. And I made some really good friends, people that I still talk to this day. Most of the people that I worked with who were teachers in South Korea continue to be in education today. So it was also a bonding experience for us, but definitely something that I recommend. You learn a lot about not just others, but also about yourself.
Yeah, I personally have a lot to say on that, but I'm going to keep it short. I love that you said, I also lived in South Korea for a little bit. I taught there for 3 months, and I also taught in Italy. And it was one of the most amazing experiences. That's where I first began to get my teaching experience. And something that I think it's important for people to know is that you don't really need to have a teaching certification. There'll be like these programs where you can apply for it, and public schools, they hire outside companies that have native speakers who can come into the English classrooms in these public schools and give them an authentic, experience in the target language, in this case, being English. So it's something that I like people to know, because some people, they want to study abroad, they want to go to Italy, they want to go to France, they want to go to, Korea. And it's an amazing opportunity that you can take. You don't have to, sacrifice everything to go abroad. You can end up doing that and working in another country, just using what you already know, which is your English, and giving them that authentic experience, and being able to afford, your experience abroad. And so I taught in various public schools in Italy, and there I was able to also learn a lot about the patients, and they gave me some constructive feedback. And also in Korea, that was culture shock for me. Um, Italians, I already understood them because my best friend was from Rome in high school, but Korea was something else because the language, the culture, I didn't understand. Like I can read it and write it, but and I was taking Korean classes at the time, but I was still, oh my goodness, it was like I think it took me a whole month to recover from the time I was there. But they're so kind there, and the food was amazing. And I think the best challenge with South Korea was the fact that I don't speak Korean fluently. So I was speaking English the entire time in the classroom. And I think, for anybody who's teaching ESL or EFL, one about the tendencies is to want to switch to the students, L1 so that so that they understand you, but you're supposed to be speaking in the target language all of the time. So it was a great experience to learn how to speak the target language 90, because it's supposed to be 90+% of the time as per ACTFL. And so that was one of the best challenges there. And so, I won the Gilman Scholarship at Barnard. I mean, Barnard really did a lot for me. I think I got like one of the highest scholarships for I remember my essay was on the word familia and how, I was meant to speak Italian. I mean, I don't remember what I wrote for the essay, but I won the Gilman Scholarship because of that. I was able to study abroad, and then I wanted to go back. And so I did the master's in Italy as well after that. And so because of Barnard, I was able to, kind of get that authentic experience to know, okay, this is something that I want to continue doing, and that is worth investing my time in. So for anybody that wants to study abroad, I'd say do it, and there's that option. You can also do au pairing while you're teaching in another school, and, always go to the private companies. If you can't find a job, use the target, use your English, give them that authentic experience. It's incredible.
Yeah, totally agree. Like I would say after graduating, like if you have that time and the desire, like go now. Go abroad, live somewhere else, go for a few years. It's just such an incredible, life-changing, transformative experience. So it's interesting that I started out as an English conversational classroom assistant in Madrid at a bilingual school. And then many years later, I now teach Spanish in a bilingual school in Philadelphia. So just like it was an interesting perspective just to see like the different education systems of these two different places, like definitely very different, structured differently, emphasizing different kinds of skills and learning in their students. During my time in Madrid, I had a lot of time and freedom, and that's because I was part of this special program run by the Ministry of Education. So I basically taught as a conversational assistant in a school for about 20 hours a week. And then I basically supplemented my income by doing things like tutoring after school, teaching at different language academies. So I was all over the city every day, which was pretty easy because the public transportation in Madrid was and continues to be incredible. And I often look upon my times in Madrid with a lot of fondness because my job now is just so much harder, just because of the nature of this full-time, gig that I have. It's a full schedule, and teaching in the US and I'm sure everywhere is just a really hard job. So, finally, I also want to point out just the drastic difference between the school lunches. Like that was like one thing that I kind of came away with, like school lunches in Madrid versus in Philadelphia. Like in Madrid, 3-course delicious meals, soup, salad, seafood, like paella. And then, here it's like pizza Fridays. So it's definitely something completely different between the two places.
I feel like the topic of lunches can be like a really great segue to our next question. And I'm really happy that we're able to get the administrative side from Wendy, as well as the teaching perspective from Mabel and Natalie. What does your workday look like?
I feel like just for the teachers, there is no day that's like any other day. Every single day, it's very different. I can talk about today, my mornings. I was updating brochures and flyers because this weekend we have an event at a park where we're going to go and talk to Spanish-speaking families that our program exists. Because something that we found out is that not many families know that our program exists in our district. We have 2 dual language schools. So we just want to make sure that all of our families know that we're here and that their child has the opportunity to learn in 2 languages. So that was this morning. This afternoon, I'm going to my middle school. Our program continues in middle school and high school. So I have a team meeting with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade immersion teachers. And then this afternoon, after that meeting, I'm working on a presentation for the academic chief in central office so that he knows about the changes that are happening in our program next year. So currently we are a 50-50 dual language immersion program model. That means that students in elementary schools spend 50% of the day learning in Spanish and then 50% of the day learning in English. Next year, we're switching to an 80-20 model. So students are going to spend 80% of the day learning in Spanish. And we made that decision because it provides a stronger foundation in Spanish, and then students can slowly acquire English in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th grades. So yeah, that's my day.
I was curious about how it works for administrators. So for me, piggybacking off of the mindfulness thing, I meditate, especially we have day 1s and day 2s because I live in Jersey. I'm at the Jersey Shore. I don't know how it works I went to high school in New York and I don't remember anymore, but we have day 1 and day 2 in Jersey, and day 2 I tend to have more of the students with IEPs and 504s. So I like to prepare for that a lot, make sure that the lessons account for that and that I'm, mentally prepared for that. So I do a lot of meditation in the morning, and then, the day starts at 7:30. I remember starting at 9 when I was in high school. So that's already very early, but 7:30, and then I have like one class, we have homeroom, then I have another class, then lunch, and then there's then there's another class, and then teacher prep, and then I have my last class. And so during lunch and teacher prep, a lot of students will come in and ask for help, or they'll speak about something that's going on, because high schoolers, there's always some drama there. Usually there's about like 2 or 3 meetings, we call them PLCs, a week. And for the PLCs, we speak about what we're doing in the classroom, and we give each other suggestions and, usual routine things like lesson plans are due at 3 p.m. on Thursdays. Make sure you get this done. We also have something called SGO, Student Growth Objectives, which is where we put in, we give students, we make our own test. More or less, it has to be something that is going to be testing what they will be learning for the year. So we give that to them about twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year. And we measure their growth and we put it into this website called Link It. And so it's something that we're doing right now. We're seeing where they are now compared to the beginning of the year. We put that in, and that goes into our professional development plan. We are observed, and this is something really important to know, that there are a lot of teacher observations. Some schools will have more teacher observations than others. We have something called data walks, which means that they can just walk in any moment. And then we have 4 observations. The first 2 years, you have 4 observations, and then about 4 data walks. I was already observed like 4 and 4. Last year it was a little less, it just depends. We just have, we had a new principal now, so there was a little, some extra observations this year. What they're looking for is always, classroom management, which is really important, and circulating the classroom, and being able to relate your subject to other subjects. So it's something, yesterday I was doing some studying and watching this video for this. We have something called alternate route in Jersey, where if you don't take, if you didn't take the certificate, then take the certification route at Teachers College because of the price. So I'm doing the certification now in Jersey. And it's really important for people to know also because not, you might want to save money here and there. You can do alternate route. You can take those classes, pay about like, I think 700 per course or something, and then you end up getting the certification. So for that, I'm taking this class on second language methodology. And there, one of the lessons that we were looking at was one where the guy's literally just speaking all about biology, but in Spanish. And so those are things that they're also looking. It was wild. My sister's a medical student, so I've been telling her, now I need to start learning from you, because I think that's where I think the the rating is from 1 to 4, and if you want that 4, I think that's what they're looking for. So throughout the year, 4 observations, 4 data walks in Jersey, 7:30 to 2:40. Fridays we can leave a little bit earlier. There'll always be students that want to come in and whatnot, but that's kind of a regular day. Lesson planning, we have to submit the lesson plans for the whole week ahead of time. I'm not sure in New York you have to do that, but in Jersey you do. They don't have to be as detailed, but now they're throughout the day you kind of want to get more detailed and show what it is that you're doing also to help yourself mentally. So I like to do that, but that's just kind of what a day looks like for us. There are a lot of things to get done, but after a while you get used to the kind of the routine. So thank you.
Yeah, so what a typical day at my school looks like. I usually get to school by 7:15. My advisory students start arriving at 7:55. I always just like to arrive at school at least half an hour because I really kind of need like that emotional buffer between like walking through the door and then the students walking into my room. Time to get coffee, make copies, and kind of set everything up. So we have advisory time from 7:55 to 8:40, and that's usually a time to connect with your advisory students. Some days we circle up, we'll play games. It's time for social emotional learning. Sometimes we'll talk about what's going on in their lives. Other days we'll kind of like watch a movie that's kind of related to like a heritage month or something like that. So that time is just kind of an important time in the morning to connect with your students and just kind of like spend some downtime with them, which can be really nice. So I usually teach 4 to 5 classes a day. I teach 2 different curriculums. I teach Spanish as well as Spanish language arts for the students that are in the immersion program at our school. Usually I have at least 2 prep periods a day, one which is lunch, and our schedule is kind of wonky this year because we have lunch. 6th grade has lunch at different times of day, so there'll be like 3rd period lunch Monday and then 6th period lunch Tuesday and so on and so forth. I don't know why, it's just the way that the schedule worked this year, and scheduling is just really, really hard in general. Actually, on Wednesdays, we have half days. So normally school ends at 3:15 on a normal day, but on Wednesdays, we have half days. The kids get to go home at 1:20, and the teachers have to stay until 3:30 for additional meetings, BDs, and trainings. And actually today I was able to make it easily to this panel because, I just had to leave a little bit earlier than usual. So yeah, that's a normal day in a nutshell. Usually though, I don't leave school until 4 or 4:30 because there's just always, things like grading and setting up your room for the next day and all the little detailed things that you need to do as a teacher at the end of the day. So yeah.
I actually love the emphasis that's being put on both mindfulness, and Mabel, you mentioned the sort of emotional buffer before sort of engaging with your students, because I imagine that the utilization of energy is extensive when you're in the classroom. I think that kind of prepares us for our next question. What advice would you give to students who are interested in language teaching, but are unsure of how to pursue this path? And I also want to ask another layer to this question is like, how do you guys sort of prioritize self-care as you navigate space in the classroom as well? So those two questions.
So I'm going to jump right in because I actually waited to teach because of that. So I wasn't emotionally ready to teach yet. So I waited for a while. I mean, when I taught in Italy, like I got some experience where I was like, I'm not ready. And so one thing I will say is, again, you know, I'm my school, they emphasize a lot SEL, you know, social emotional learning and mindfulness. I will say, don't be afraid. I think that you're always going to mess up at first. There are going to be a lot of things that you think that you could have done better. Unfortunately, there's no way around that. Only experience will change that. You know, obviously there's, you know, being professional and whatnot, and of course, you know, you need to have that, you know, you need to have that filter, you need to have that mentality, and you know, be able to do that in the classroom in general. There, you know, you've seen the news nowadays, but in general, that aside, I think that everyone's going to mess up at first, and so don't be afraid of the process, don't be afraid of jumping right in, but if you need the time to prepare, you know, take whatever time you need. The way that I balance it, again, I meditate for like 2-3 hours a day. I'm really big on meditation when I have the time. Some days I meditate for like 10 minutes, sometimes 15. I just read this book, and I can't recall it right now, but I read this book on understanding, you know, one of the big points that it made is understanding that every student is actually going through something, and we're all still growing, and in the same way, you know, we even have our own immature days. So it's understanding that when a student is having a bad day, it's, you know, don't take it personally, they're going through something. And that's why mindfulness is so important. It's understanding that everyone is going through something and being able to just take a step back before reacting. And so I think that's one of the most important things about this job, is being mindful of that. That's one of the big advice that I'd have. Like, I don't think I was as mindful when I was in Italy, because Italians are also, the teachers were screaming down the hall there. You know, it's just different there. And so, you know, that's my main advice, is the way that I just balance it out. I make time to meditate no matter what, because I know that if I don't do it, if I don't spend time to just think about the day, what could have done better, I'm going to regret it later. There won't always be time, but, you know, I do my best there. And, you know, the other advice, just take whatever time you need. Don't be afraid of jumping right in, but also, you know, it's not going to feel great right at first. It's not, unfortunately. It's a difficult job, but it's also, the reward is also, you know, the rewards are amazing. You know that you're making a difference. And, you know, I have so many students that I have like a number of like letters on my refrigerator, students that told me that I made a difference for them, and you know, they were having a rough time this and that day. So there will be times that you'll be making a difference and you don't even realize it. So you know, what we think is very different from what is actually happening.
I think Mabel mentioned this, but definitely if you have the opportunity to study abroad or work abroad, that's something that's, if you're unsure about teaching, you know, that's going to help you decide if that is the right path for you. In terms of finding a job, once you've decided and you're ready to teach, I think that initial interview with the school is very important. Definitely visit the school, talk to teachers who work there, because you're going to spend many hours in this building, and you want to ensure that you're in a good place, especially for a first-year teacher, that you're going to receive support. A lot of school districts now have coaches available to help first-year teachers. Make sure that whatever team you end up working in, that it is a team that is supportive and collaborative. And if it's not, then you got to find other people in the building who are ready to do the same kind of work that you are ready to do. So find partners, find people that think the way that you do, who care about students, who want to improve education. They exist, they're out there. But like Natalie was saying, that first year can be very tough, and it's really, really important to take care of yourself. something that I learned is that get to know your families, but not all families are going to be receptive to the advice, the recommendations, or the things that you want for those students. So pick your battles. Know that there are families who love you and want to work with you. And then there's some families that are a little bit tougher, and that's okay too. But you have to really, really get to know your families. That's going to really help you that initial first year and in the years after that too. So that my advice is get to know your students and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like one of the major things like to think about, even you know, when thinking about like if you're in the process of deciding if you want to take the path towards language teaching, or if you're in a job already and you need help, like I really think that making those connections to other people, you know, not being afraid to reach out to other people is really, really important. You know, in terms of if you're unsure about whether to go into language teaching, or if you're still, you know, figuring things out or finding out information, it's really helpful to just talk to other experienced language teachers who have been, say, through like the process of getting a certification, who, you know, in the process of looking for, who have interviewed for jobs. So I, for example, got my PA cert at Temple, and I was actually in the beginning just really unsure about the whole process of getting certified until I called, you know, one of the department heads. I set up just a phone call with him, and he basically walked me through everything. I had a lot of questions. He answered all my questions and was kind of a mentor to me during my whole time there. You know, my other classmates during the certification program were also just really great resources to have. So I would say just not being afraid to reach out to people with experience who can help you figure out, you know, what you might want to do. The other thing I would say, and piggybacking off what Natalie already mentioned about like self-care, I actually take time to meditate every day as well. Like in the morning, I have just a really I do like the same routine every morning. I do a little bit of stretching, and then I take about 10 minutes to meditate. And I find that that time really helps me just kind of like collect myself. It's really early in the morning, you know, I might be having thoughts like, oh, I don't, you know, like it's too early, I'm tired, I don't want to go to school. But just having that time to be with myself and like, you know, like being mindful, being aware of those thoughts that are popping up for me. I would also say, you know, like teaching can be such a life-consuming job, and like everyone has said here, like the first year is just so touch and go. It's so hard. It's so overwhelming. You feel like you're never doing enough and you're always doing the wrong thing. So I would, you know, go along with what Natalie said about just trust the process and know that you're going to make mistakes, but know that you're learning too. You're learning along with your students. And I think from year to year, it gets better. It gets easier. Definitely set aside time every day after school for yourself to connect with other people, to have coffee with friends, you know, to read a book. Just scheduling in time for yourself to relax and just really decompress from the day is really important. I also like to listen to teaching podcasts. There's one that I really enjoy. It's called Truth for Teachers by Angela Watson. And she also does this like 40-hour work week program that really helps teachers balance out, you know, the work life and school life. And I find a lot of her articles really useful. I also have read some of her books, and, you know, her books kind of, they are really cool because she talks about, you know, just the relationship between mind and body, but also in the realm of teaching. So I you know, if you want to know more about mindfulness and just how to be, just how to be able to better control your like emotions and your reactions, which will happen, that it's just a lot of frustrating things will come up at school. So her books and her articles and her podcasts have kind of really taught me a lot and have helped me just become a better teacher and be more aware of myself and reflective of myself.
I just want to add something to that. I think what we're really saying is be kind to yourself, especially during those first few years. For me, I don't think it was until my third year of teaching that I felt like, okay, I know how to do this now. So it takes time. Teaching is a really tough profession. It's very stressful. There's a lot of expectations, especially nowadays with all the responsibilities. I mean, teachers have a million jobs in one. So it's really important to set boundaries, and that looks different for different people. But it's very important to take care of your physical, mental well-being, so that you can be there for your students and your families. That you don't burn out, because it's very easy nowadays to burn out as an educator. I see it a lot in the different schools. So now more than ever, that is very important to take care of yourself.
Thank you so much for sharing such valuable insight. I have one last question that I'm going to throw your way, an unplanned question, just reeling back a bit from our conversation. I'd love to hear about sort of what are your hopes for your own career and for your profession in general? And you could take a minute to think about this before you respond as well. And anyone can jump in.
Well, I think, again, with this course that I'm taking right now and having seen all of these teaching videos, again, it's just, I think having more sense, one of my hope is having more sense of what I'm doing. I think that the first year you always feel like you don't know what you're doing. But as the more I teach, the more I see how things should progress as per, like grammar targets and language and, vocabulary and whatnot, and where I want to go with whatever it is that I'm teaching. But I think that ultimately, one of the places that I want to go to is being able to have that knowledge in order to be able to apply other subjects and, everything in the classroom, whereas my classroom won't just be an Italian classroom, but it'll be an authentic experience as if the student was just, in Italy in school learning about everything. And I think that providing that authentic experience in the classroom, being able to do that to the best of my ability, and inspiring students while I do that, that's one of my major goals. As I said earlier, I think a number of teachers, we've been told, you can eventually become an administrator, become a principal. I think that I'm probably one of the people that doesn't. I feel like if everyone does that, we won't have any teachers left. And I like my job, and so I don't see that changing. I love teaching Italian. I love the language, and my goal, I think, is ultimately to instill in the students that passion that I got for Italian in high school and at Barnard. To have them actually study it and eventually bring the AP, because we don't have the AP there yet. And so I have a lot of personal goals to see Long Branch grow before I move on to another school. But I feel like, there are a lot of other schools that probably are, they have a lot more, they offer a lot more with Italian, and I could be working there right now, but it serves no purpose, right? Like, I like to see other places grow, and I want to be able to do something about it. So for me, that's one of my major goals. Just having, being able to offer higher levels of Italian, inspiring students to learn more, making them more curious about the world around them. Yeah, I'm sure I could say a lot more, but
I'll hop in. Yeah, similarly to Natalie, I want to just be like the best educator I can be in terms of like knowing my resources, being like up to date on the most current like best practices for teaching. I want to keep learning. I want to keep going to even like conferences for language teaching. I think that you know, teaching is about kind of growing your learning as a teacher, you know, and teaching as a profession is changes every year, every decade. And so I think that staying up to date, you know, listening to the newest information, seeking out new resources for your subject or for your field is really important as a teacher who is reflective. And you know, I really just also want to be the teacher that, like Natalie said, like inspires other young people to, you know, go live abroad, you know, really take courses in foreign languages, and kind of just really see the connection between learning a language and connecting with and knowing other people and bridging, you know, cultures, being a global citizen. You know, I think that is just so important to growing up and becoming a young adult and eventually an adult in the world, wherever you work. Yeah, so you know, I see myself staying at this school, Independence Charter. I want to eventually reach my tenure mark and then take a year sabbatical and live somewhere else and keep learning, you know, another language. Yeah, I want to become a teacher who inspires other students to have that same passion that I had.
Mabel, that's inspiring me too. So for me, as a dual language immersion coordinator, I think I'm in the job that I always wanted to have. I just didn't know that I wanted it because I love being a teacher. And even nowadays, I dream of one day going back into the classroom. So I am in central office, and there are opportunities also to become a school administrator, whether that's be an assistant principal or principal in the future. But I have a mentor who advised me to wait, and I trust this person very much. And I think that I'm going to do that before I dip my toes into that arena. For me, my dream is that I will continue to engage families. I think that I'm actually new to this role this year. It was created because it hadn't existed in our program. It has over 30 years that it's been going on here in the district. So I'm the first person to have this role. And I think that we haven't done a very good job of engaging all of our families. So to me, that's really important because a lot of times teachers are expected to do everything, especially when it comes to learning a language. And it can't just be the teachers, you know, families have to also help at home. And that doesn't mean that they have to speak the language at home. It just means that they can try to expose the child, whether that's listening to music in the L2 or the second language, or watching movies, or making sure that they have friends who also speak that language. So there's all sorts of things that I'm trying to do to support families so that they can also support the work that we're trying to do at the school. So for me, that's a big goal. And also to promote, not only just to promote high academic achievement, but also foster social cultural competence, which is part of our program. Like, a program is not just learning Spanish or English, it's also learning to develop those positive cross-cultural relationships.
Thank you so much. I just want to take a moment here. Thank you again to our panelists for joining us today and answering my questions with so much care and thoughtfulness. For our panelists here, you'll be hearing from me. I'll put everyone in one email so that you guys can exchange contact information as well. After the recording is up on our YouTube channel, I'd love to send student questions your way if that's okay with you. Hopefully it will connect for future events as well. Thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.